This is Startup Republic, your home for in-depth business startup stories, investment tips, and more, explained by some of the most influential entrepreneurs of our time. Enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, Logan Soleil here, your host of Startup Republic, and today we're joined in Scottsdale by Andrew Abernathey, an entrepreneur who started his investing career at 13 years old and is the founder and CEO of Abernathey Holding Company and the co-founder of Abernathey Brothers Farm. He also works alongside a nonprofit, Unseen, based out of Fargo, to fight human trafficking across the world. Andrew, it's great to have you here.
I appreciate it.
And let's get this thing started.
That's right. I'm ready. I'm excited.
So I want to start everything with an icebreaker question. And I want to ask you, in your opinion, is a college degree necessary to be successful today?
All right. Right off the bat. Good question. You know, that's a loaded question for sure. I think that college degrees, I think when you go into college, you're not educated when it comes to what the ROI of a college education is. And a lot of people don't even know what I'm talking about when I say that. But when you go and get a college degree, it shouldn't just be, I'm going to go get a college degree because it's what I'm supposed to do. You should go into it like an investment. So, for example, if your college degree is going to cost you $100,000, and then the job outside of that degree, once you graduate, is going to pay you $100. Taxes take out $30, so let's say you're at $70, and let's say your lifestyle is $50,000 a year. That leaves $20,000. You take $20,000 divided by the 100, that's a 20% ROI on your college education. That makes sense, right? You see so many people, though, going into college, and they get out with a $30,000 paying job, and they've got $250,000 college in debt. Well, that doesn't make any sense in any way you cut it. So, do I believe in college education? If you look at it like in a business investment, yes. Am I a dropout? Maybe it's the next question. I'm not sure. The answer is yes. So, it didn't make sense for me. I have 6 siblings, and they have all gone different routes, and each of them made sure that their college decision made sense for them.
So on to your backstory.
Hope that makes sense.
Of course. I want to kick it off with your story from when you were 13 years old.
Yeah.
And you had your little pot of cash, and you're like, I'm going to invest this money, and got the whole thing started.
Yeah, so I grew up on a family farm in North Dakota, about 15 miles from the Canadian border. So I always joke it's kind of like, to most people, it's like Little House on the Prairie, right? My dad was a farmer, my mom was a school teacher, and 6 of us siblings. So I knew at a pretty young age that I loved numbers and investing. My dad and my parents were very good about introducing me to things, and all the siblings for that matter, for things that they were passionate about. So when I was 10 years old, my dad noticed I had a knack for, money and marketing. So he helped me kind of get into the job of marketing and selling the grain on our family farm. And he looked at everything I did, and he also, I was running combine, grain cart, and he said, all right, well, I'll pay $5 an hour to do these things. And I was doing 2 things. One, I was kind of just learning what grain markets were. And remember now, I just want to set your scene here. I am 10 years old. At this time, I still didn't know what a stock market was. I mean, I was just flirting with the general concept of money. So parallel now, 10 to, we'll go to 13-ish, 14. I had $6,000 saved up from $5 an hour doing work for my parents at the farm. And there's a red go kart I always dreamed of, and I bought that. So I was down to $4,000. I mean, can you blame me, right? I mean, I was 13. Yeah. So that $4,000, I wanted to do something more. I wanted to get in the stock market. And how I learned of the stock market at 13 was, it was 2009, and it was all over the news. Market was crashing. And I'm like, what is this thing, right? So March 23rd, 2009, my 14th birthday, I invested my $4,000. And the bottom was March 5th, I believe. So it was pretty fortunate timing. And I bought Ford at 99 cents, Bank of America at $3, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac at 33 cents. And that was kind of the start.
Amazing. So what drove your passion to become an entrepreneur? You kind of touched that. with your dad, but
yeah, it's, I always joke, I don't think the entrepreneur world, I don't think I chose it. I think it kind of chose me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't remember before I was 10, so I don't remember what it was like not being obsessed with it. It was pretty much to explain it, it was pretty much the most natural thing for me that you could ever explain. It's kind of like walking, and I'm thankful for that every day.
Yeah. So mentorship is a big thing I've been talking to you about lately. Do you have a mentor? And if you do, when was it the right time to find one?
Yeah, well, I think I think you should find one as soon as you can, because I see in the world a lot that people have a goal to be someone, but they surround themselves with people and they have mentors that are not the person that they want to be. It's contradicting. It seems simple, but it happens so often. So, for example, if my goal is to be a billionaire, which it is, which I'm not yet, but it's my goal, it probably wouldn't make very much sense for me to listen to my distant relative that is in science or teaching or music, right? Very noble professions. They're happy what they do. They're probably amazing. But it wouldn't make sense for me to listen to them if I want to be a billionaire. And it's very common nowadays for people to do that. So to answer your question, yes, I think as soon as possible. And I think you should find a mentor that is what you want to be. And when I say what you want to be, remember, that goal needs to be big. Yeah. When you're young, you're like, gosh, I want to make $1,000, right? Or I want to make $1 million. That's great. But think bigger. What do you want to be eventually? Right. When you watch TV, you turn it on, or you wake up and you're watching a guy, you're like, oh my God, I want to be him. Who is that? There's no dream or vision too big.
So on to your real estate, personal and with your company.
Yep.
Can you discuss your first real estate deal?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I bought this little house in Mulhall, and it's on railroad ties. It's nothing very special. Bought it for well under $100,000, and I've been renting it out for $500 a month. So it was a very, very inexpensive deal. I think I put like $4,000 cash down on it. Like that was my down payment. And I get like $500 a month in rent since then, which has been over a decade. So that was probably my first real estate deal. Yeah.
For a first-time investor, what do you recommend doing for the first deal? And how would you grow your portfolio from there? I know from that first property, you eventually made a pretty darn big deal with a couple investors, yes, your local neighbors.
Yeah, so it all kind of happened pretty quick. I mean, if you were just to sum up, hey, if the question was, what did you all buy in high school in real estate? My brother and I bought some farmland, but and then we bought that house, and I bought a place in Minot, which isn't far from Minot. I say Minot, I guess, because locals say it differently. But I bought a place there, but the first big deal, you're right. So in 11th grade, 10th grade, I went and bought a $1.2 million property in Bismarck, which is about 3 hours south of us. And again, in high school, everybody's like, what the heck, Andrew? Like, how are you going to manage that? And the funny story, I'm going to back up. So I went to my buddy's dad. He's a banker in our small town of 800. And I'm like, hey, we'll say his name is Jimmy, just for security reasons. Hey, Jimmy, I need a loan for 1.25. I remind you, I'm in 10th grade.
Yep.
Oh, okay, Andrew. Well, you're going to need like $380,000 down and like a personal guarantee. And at the time, I was pretty impressed at myself, but I had $80,000, which is what I turned my $4,000 to a couple of years earlier in the market that we talked about. I turned that to $80,000 in about 2 years. And so I'm sitting there like, all right, Jimmy, I got $80,000 and no personal guarantee. I'd give it to you, but it's not worth anything. So that's when I said, all right, I need to maybe raise some money. And that was when I printed off Warren Buffett's original 1956 partnership agreement. And I went and raised $300,000, and we bought those apartments. And that was my first big deal.
So finding the right partner in a real estate deal is not easy. Something, again, we discussed. In your opinion, do you believe in partnering with a deal? And if so, when is it the right time to utilize a partner in a deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've had a lot of partners And I've been very fortunate with good partners. I think if you are going to get a partner, I think that you need to make sure that you vet them as much as they vet you. And that's forgot sometimes, because for me, when I started raising money, I would take money from anybody. I mean, heck, I was, in high school and needed money. I was raising money, right? So, but now I've realized, and dumb luck, I was fortunate that I didn't get any bad partners. But nowadays, I vet partners just like they vet me. So to answer your question, I think it is important. I don't think giving up control is the best idea. You can get partners. Like all of my partners, are pretty much minority. I still have complete control in the companies. Not saying I don't trust partners at all. I think it's valuable. I just think there always needs to be one rooster. And you never want to have too many voices within an organization. I think that can get confusing and misleading. So to answer your question, I think it's to each their own. I really do. I think it's a personality thing. I've got, I think, 80 minority partners at this point. But again, I kept control, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And they're good partners.
In your opinion, for a first-time home buyer, or apartment complex buyer, what do you feel is the best way to finance that first deal?
Well, there's a lot of options, because there's the riskiest options, and there's the least riskiest option, and then everything in between.
Yeah.
So for me, what I looked for when I was starting was I tried to find the owners of properties that wanted to help a young, ambitious, entrepreneurial kid to get started, so that I could go to them and say, hey, I don't have 30% down. Heck, I don't even have 10% down. But what I do have is I'll work for free. I'll put everything to my name up for collateral. I'll do whatever I can. So whether that's a contract for deed, or whether you go to an independent party and loan private dollars to bring to a bank, again, you're really leveraged on paper, right? You got a first mortgage, a second mortgage, and that can be risky. But, I am a big believer when you're starting out, just go all in. Think big. I mean, if you have no kids, no wife, you're in your teens or early 20s, why not? Right? Why not risk it all? I mean, if you have to live in a box, who cares? Start over. Like, always pay back whoever loans you money, though, right? I've never once not paid a debt, ever. So I don't mean that. Like, I don't mean go get a bunch of money from people and just, if you lose, whatever. But I do mean, like, just when it comes to yourself, I'd get everything I have just to keep growing, especially at that point. Not anymore, but at that point, I for sure would have.
So I want to discuss the type of real estate you're in currently, and then why you kind of went away from single-family homes, apartments, and stuff like that.
Yep. So I started out just like raising money. In real estate, I would do any deal I could find. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Any deal that an owner was like, hey, Andrew, yeah, I'll work with deal out with you, right? We'll sell our finance. This. I can't turn that down when you're starting out. I do every deal. I don't care what real estate it is. And after a while, when I started building equity and getting investors and getting cash coming into the company, and actually, I'm not even going to take the credit that I realized this. I realized it from a mentor of mine. And one day in, I think it was about 2017, things were going pretty well at the time, but I did just make my first bad investment, and we lost about 15% of our portfolio because it was just too diversified, right? I was doing any deal I could, which I got kind of caught up in it. I mean, my gosh, you start at 10 years old, you don't know what you don't know. And my mentor told me something that kind of hurt, but it made a lot of sense. He said, Andrew, you're good at a lot of things, but you're really not great at anything. It stung a little,
yeah,
right? But it made so much sense. And that was the day that I woke up. To answer your question, this guy was a billionaire, still is a billionaire, and I shouldn't say was, multi-billionaire now. And he just said, Andrew, you've got to find something that you're great at and ignore everything else. And that meant a lot to me. So I went home, I sat down with that sentence going over and over in my head that I'm not great at anything. And I said, all right, Andrew, I made a list. I said, what do you want to do? So I made a 5-step list, and self-storage was on that list. And anyways, I picked it. and I erased everything else on the list, and I told myself I'll never do anything but. And that's what he told me to do, and that's what I did. So I started selling things off to focus on self-storage development, and any company that I can own. Like we have a construction company now, we have a garage door dealership, we have an equipment dealership. Anything that I can own that can make me build them less, more efficient, or better than my competitors, I will own it. But that's it. I don't touch anything else.
So obviously now you've built a team around you.
Yeah.
Who are the key people necessary to be successful after you can't quite do it on your own anymore?
Yep.
Kind of discuss, your management team and stuff like that. When that's the right time to jump into, and who are those key people? Yeah,
it's funny. Again, starting at 10, I keep going back to that. I've been kind of walking in a dark room, right? Like, my family's been in farming since the mid-1900s. That's all we did until I started this Abernathey Holdings on the side. And so I always tell people I'm kind of walking in a dark room, just trying not to trip over anything. So I'm going to answer this question, but remember, there's a lot of great ways that management structures can be assembled. Yeah. I have mentors that I know personally, and I have mentors that I read about and watch. And Warren Buffett is one that I sadly do not know, but he's a mentor of mine. And I've followed him since I was a young kid, and I try to follow his management structure. And if you don't know Warren Buffett's management structure, he sits in Omaha. He doesn't have a calendar full of anything. He just sits there and thinks and reads. And he has a manager that runs each of his subsidiaries that has complete power to make complete and all decisions. And Warren Buffett, heck, he hasn't even met some of his management team. I followed that model. I am the dumbest person in every room in our meetings, and I'm proud of that. I don't want to be the smartest person. We've got, Luke Stewart at Normand Equipment. He runs all of our equipment dealerships, and he's smarter than I'll ever be in that area. And he runs everything on his own. We talk every day, every other day, and if he has any questions, I answer accordingly and tell him my thoughts. But it's his decision. He's not my puppet, and him and I are partners. He's not my employee. And then I've got Nate Mayhus at Storage. Same thing there. He crushes it. He makes the decisions. He's smarter than I am, and he should be. Both of them are. My brother runs the farm operation, and he is smarter than me at that than I will ever be, and he crushes it, and I'm just proud to be part of it. And then I've got Charles and Matt at the parent company, taking care of the financials and then the general operations. I just sit back and make sure the ships are steered in the right direction. I raise capital and just make sure that we are keeping our focus. So to answer your question in a long way, which I answer a lot of questions in a long way, I just feel that making sure you have people that can own their own position, they're not puppets, and they're allowed to be smarter than you. Now let that sink in. A lot of owners always get offended or want to be the smartest person in the room. Allow your management to be smarter than you. That's really, really important.
So, on top of that, kind of discussed Warren Buffett's management strategy and his books, and stuff.
And Charlie Munger.
What do you read, listen to, follow on a daily basis, kind of to inspire you and grow your knowledge?
Yeah, so through the years, I started out at 10 years old with human nature. I think human nature is behind everything, whether I'm raising money or clients at our companies or people that store their stuff in our facilities. So human nature was big. How to Win Friends and Influence People taught me a lot about that. And it's a recommendation by Warren Buffett, and go figure.
Yeah, right.
And, Intelligent Investor, again, Warren Buffett, recommendation. Another one that I like is Charlie Munger's got a lot of books out there. Just do Charlie Munger books. I mean, the guy is hilarious. He doesn't beat around the bush, which I love. And he's got some really good books out there. And then there was this is really random, but there's this YouTube thing. And if you Google like how to invest like Warren Buffett or like Warren Buffett something, the screen of the YouTube is just like him cartoon drawn on a white screen. And it's like 12 different 45-minute episodes. And it's awesome. It goes through like how to value invest. It's the coolest thing. I don't even know what it's called, but that's what it looks like when you click it. And then I watched a lot of Harvard classes because, well, one, I'm a dropout. Or I got dropped out of my chair of college. So I had to listen to something. So I used to watch Harvard classes on YouTube for free. Sorry, Harvard. So that worked out pretty well too.
Last real estate question here. What is one thing you wish you would have known getting into real estate, that you kind of made a mistake on or what have you?
Focus.
Okay.
Investing in real estate is a very broad word, and I learned that quickly. My billionaire mentor, Gary Tharaldson, North Dakota, he built his wealth by building hotels. He started out as a gym teacher, grew up in Daisy, North Dakota, and he got to the point where he was selling insurance door to door. But the funny story is this. Gary started selling insurance in his mid or early 30s. He was so bad at it when he started. He would knock on a door and hope they wouldn't answer. And as a salesman, that's
a little nervous.
It was hilarious. And then he went and he started buying hotels. And then he started building hotels from nothing using his insurance commissions. Anyways, fast forward. He's 75 now, 76. Fast forward, though. In 2006, he sold his first portfolio. He had 250 hotels he built and owned. No investors, and just him and banks. Sold to Goldman Sachs for $2 billion. Wow. So to answer your question, Andrew, what are you doing? What have you learned? Focus is key. And everything I'm saying, none of this is original. Everything you asked me that you're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I'm just a conduit. I'm a conduit for a lot of genius people on the road. Remember, I'm not the smartest one in the room. Don't forget that part. But I'm a really good conduit, and I listen, and I'm a good copier. So Gary Tharaldson's model of owning his own construction company and buying the best lots and focusing just on hotels and using the Marriott and the Super 8, using the brands, not opening Tharaldson hotels, that's the model I took. And that's the model he told me I should take. So that's what we do in storage. We have the same exact model as he did in the hotels. So that's what I wish I would have learned earlier. If I would have started just focusing on self-storage when I was 10, I'd be a billionaire already probably. And I'm not. I'm happy with where I'm at, but focus, and ignore everything else. And that's hard for today. I mean, you go on your phone, you go on Facebook, all you see is all these great things. Distractions. It's hard. And remember, I see so many people out there chasing the idea. There's one. Everybody thinks there's one idea out there for me. I've been waiting for 20 years, and I'm going to find it. There isn't the idea. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. There's a bunch of ideas, and you just got to pick one.
Yeah.
That's it. There's millions of ideas.
So on to Abernathey Holding Company.
Yeah.
I know you started in real estate, but then you're like, well, I'm going to branch out and kind of do my own thing from the family company, kind
Correct.
of besides the point. So can you discuss your route of starting that holding company besides the family farm?
Yeah. And, and that was my parents are so awesome. They really have taught us kids how to be independent and, work for what we have. And what I mean by this is in the farming community, if you are a boy, you are known to this. You're going to take the farm over. It's just an unsaid thing, right? Or at least that's what I thought, and I still think that's true. So my brother and I were the boys in the family, and that's what we were going to do. It was not spoken. But I always had a passion for investing on the side. And so for the first few years, I bought the hotel or the apartment in Bismarck. I bought the school, the house by the school. I bought the place in Fargo and Minot. I did all of that parallel to my brother and I farming. And so anyways, between 2010 and 2014, I was doing all these things on the side. And that was at the time, that's what I was telling myself. That was my story at the time, right? Everybody has a story.
Right.
Everybody sits down and tells themselves, this is what I'm going to do. This is my story. Everybody has that picture. So at the time, that was my story. My story was, I'm going to farm, I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to invest on the side to tickle my itch, and life's going to be good. Well, as I went down that path, I noticed that I had a lot more passion for investing out. I had a lot more passion for being a passive investor in things than being active, period, whatever industry it is. And I remember being so scared to tell my dad that, hey, Dad, I don't want to farm, but I want to stay an owner, of course. I don't expect to take a salary. I want to stay an owner. My brother Jared and I, we did it for 4 years. And I talked to my brother, and he was cool that he's like, yeah, I'll be an owner of what you do. You be an owner of what I do, and all's good. But we all have parents, right? You want to make your parents proud.
Mm-hmm.
So I was scared. I was scared to tell my dad. But the cool thing is, back to why my parents are so awesome, I told my parents, gulping it down, scared. And after I was done, they look at me and they say, we were waiting for you to tell us that. I'm like, what? You were waiting? Like, why didn't you tell me? Or like initiate it. Like, I'm struggling. Like, So they told me that, and I just was in shock. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you guys are amazing. And they just said, we didn't tell you because that's not our decision to make. And if that was a decision that you were supposed to make, which we thought it was, because we know you more than anybody, we needed you to be a man and tell us. And that was the coolest thing. So in 2014, December, I retired from being an active farmer. And, but I knew before I retired, I had to raise so much money because I only get a certain percentage of what I manage as in this fund. That's how I set it up, right? Well, I had to make my company I started with $4,000. I had to make it big enough so I could at least pull enough to live. I mean, I was out of the house. I had a mortgage. So I was like, I need at least like $50,000 a year. I'd pay my own insurance, Right. So I did the math. Like, all right, well, I got to raise $2.5 million. I'm like, all right, well, I got $1 million from the profits I made on the apartments. Yep. And again, I'm like a senior in high school right now. So I went out. It was raining. We weren't farming. I was knocking on doors for farmers. I'm like, hey, I did pretty good in the stock market. Did pretty good on an apartment in Bismarck. I'm raising some money. And farming was good. I got a lot of amazing neighbors and a lot of great people in our community that believed in me. And I'll never, ever, ever not be grateful for that. And I raised it was like $10 million in like 13 months. Like something crazy. Like 100 to 200 grand average. And that was enough. And so I went and did this and I did it separate. The farm, well, there's two reasons I didn't put investors in the farm. I didn't intermingle. One, it's family business. I don't look at it as mine. I'm a steward of it, but it's not mine. So I would never have investors come into that and intermingle that. And then secondly, in North Dakota, corporate farming is illegal. So you can't have, I guess these investors would have worked. But anyways, so we kept it separate. We have Abernathey Farms. My brother and I are 50-50. And then we got Abernathey Holdings that does all the storage. Everything the farm isn't involved in is Abernathey Holdings. And I still have control of it. My brother's still an owner. But that's where we have our 80 partners.
Can you discuss all the assets and companies involved with Abernathey Holding Company?
Yeah. So we've had some stuff along the way. But to sum it up, self-storage, Class A self-storage. The ones that you see that look like an apartment building that have extra space storage, public storage, Cube Smart, the ones in the big cities that, look gorgeous. Though that's Class A. Mm-hmm. Class C is like a drive-up storage tin buildings you see outside of town, just to give like a little lesson on the difference. So my focus was Class A self-storage development. I wasn't going to go buy any. Cap rates were 4.7% and still are. And they're really expensive. So I'm like, all right, well, I think developing them is where the money's at. So everything that Abernathey Holdings owns is based off of Class A self-storage development. So we own a construction company. We own a equipment dealership. We own a garage door dealership. We get part of the realtor fee when we buy the lot. We... no secrets here. In the future, I'd like to own a title company, an HVAC company, a garage door installation company. Right now, so each facility that we build them for about $12 million. When they're stabilized, they're worth about $17 million. That $12 million is our competitors' cost. We actually build them today for 11. And hopefully someday I can build them for 10. Mm-hmm. So just to sum it up, every facility we build today, we make $1 million before the doors even open. And right now we're averaging, I don't know, that 2 to 3 facilities a year is kind of where we're at right now. But in 5 to 10 years, I'd like to sit here and say we're opening one new one every month. If we can open a new one every month and we're saving $2 million a facility, that's $24 million we'll make before the doors even open. So again,
that is huge.
Vertical integration, concentration, think bigger.
With a potential investor, how does one start the process with Abernathey Holding Company? What are some of the requirements they got to fulfill? And
yeah, so I don't have license. I don't have a Series 7 or anything like that, and I never wanted one. So I just kind of asked my lawyer again, some dumb kid, like, hey, so I can raise money from anybody? I don't have a license. It's like, well, hey, since you don't have a license, you're going to have to, you're going to only have to raise money from qualified and accredited investors, which to the audience that doesn't know, it's accredited. It started out as accredited. I can only raise from accredited. It's $1 million net worth, not including your main residence, or you make $200,000 a year with your spouse. Those are the requirements to be accredited. So if you're accredited, I can raise money from you. No license. Life is good. We have very good private placement memorandums and all that. And then after a while, as we got bigger, my lawyer said, all right, Andrew, you can only raise from qualified investors. I'm like, all right, what is qualified investor? So they're like, well, it's just double. So $2,400,000. It's double the credit. So that's all I can raise money from. But that's fine. It's fine. And then we have a minimum. We like to see $500,000 to $1 million invested nowadays. Maybe $250,000. We can make it's situations work, but we like to see $500,000 to $1 million come in for any new investor.
And how long do you hold it? And is there any guarantees for that investor?
Yeah, no guarantees. That's a swear word. No, I was kidding. But yeah, no guarantees. So with that, we tell them, there's never any guarantee either of when a tender offer will be. We're a complete growth company. My money, everybody else's money is in the same class of stock and units. I don't have Class A and they have Class B. It's all the same.
Yep.
I do a salary. I don't do profit sharing. We don't do stock compensation awards. We don't do any of that crap. Basically, we tell investors, hey, come on in. No dividends, growth company, no guarantees. Here's our past returns. Hoping we can do it in the future. We're honest. We're loyal. And all my money's in it. So I better not mess up. And then we tell them every 5 years, we like to do tender offers. So again, tender offer, the company likes to buy back units if someone's willing to sell, which gives someone an exit if so they desire,
right,
without being handcuffed. That's our biggest goal. When somebody invests, we just say no guarantees, but we never want you to feel like you have to be invested. That's our goal.
So with goal setting being a topic right now, what's your 5-year goal? And then what's your, say, 20-year goal for Abernathey Holding Company?
All right. Well, my goals, don't mean these arrogantly, because these are just scorecards and it's nothing about the money. I just like doing things that other people have found a challenge doing. Currently, we're at a $50 million valuation, $100 million in assets. In 10 years, I'd like to be to $1 billion assets, $300 million valuation. That's 10 years. I mean, I have big goals. Yeah. Like I would like the company itself net value in 30 years to be $5-6 billion net, and assets will be 30, 40, 50 billion.
Yeah. Wow. Love that.
Yeah.
Set big goals, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Think bigger. I mean, if I miss, I'm still doing pretty good. Like,
yeah, right.
That's what I always thought about, right? Like, all right, Andrew, like, when I was like 10, I'm like, what do you want to be worth like next year? I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm worth like $10,000 next year. And I was worth maybe 6, but I'm still like, shit, like, that's still really good.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I want to be a millionaire before I graduate high school. And I was, thank God. But, even if I would have been worth $500,000, I'd have been jacked.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, of course.
My goal was, way back, my goal was to be worth $10 million at 30 years old. And, I'm 27 now, and I think, on paper it's like 20 million or 22 million. So now I just reset the goal. I just raised it.
Yeah.
Whatever. Again, goals are good.
So some wrap-up questions here. What are some of the key mistakes you've learned from already on your entrepreneurial journey?
The focus thing,
yep.
I'm just going to go back to it. Like, that is everything.
Okay.
Like, say no to everything else. Pick something you're passionate about. Pick one thing and ignore everything. Put your blinders up. I wish I would have learned that earlier. Another thing I learned is, like, just starting is half the battle. Mm-hmm. I'm really fortunate that before I even, like, have a thought in my mind, I've already gone, like, a mile down a road of an idea. But I feel like a lot of people don't have that luxury, right, and they spend so much time thinking and this and that. Like, if the sun is in the right spot and the idea is handed to me in a silver platter and the money's in my bank account, then yeah, maybe I'll do this. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that's never going to happen.
Right.
Right? Like, they just set these unprecedented scenarios that just aren't realistic.
Right.
So I'm really thankful that I just start, but that is the hardest thing, is just start and focus. It sounds so simple. It really does. I said you're thinking back, like if I told that to my 10-year-old self, my 10-year-old self would be like, okay, this sounds way too simple. But it actually isn't. I mean, try doing it for a year and you'll know exactly what I mean. Human nature is your worst enemy. And a lot of people are taught to diversify to grow their wealth. And that's not true. The billionaire mentor of mine told me something once that was really interesting. He said, Andrew, billionaires grow their wealth on an idea, a company. And then they diversify the wealth on diversification once they've built it. It doesn't happen the other way around. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a nest egg and want to retire and be happy and sleep good at night, then great. 401ks, IRAs, diversification, that's great. But people come out of college and they've got, first they go and buy a house, then they buy a car, and then they do whatever else, all these depreciating assets. Yep. And then they're like, maybe I should start investing. What the heck? That makes no sense.
No.
So I'm a big believer in focus first, diversify later. Diversify when you've got hundreds and billions of dollars to do it.
Yeah, right.
Why would you diversify now? If that's your goal, right. Of course.
So mindset's another big thing too.
Yeah.
Can you discuss your mindset? I know you're very passionate. You're very up. You're very energetic.
Yeah.
How you got to that mindset? How you feel yourself up every morning?
Yeah, I think there's a natural way about it for some people. What I mean by that is I wake up and I'm just naturally excited, driven. Like my mind's like, it could be Sunday at church and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what if I built the hallway 2 inches more narrow? How many square feet would that add to my rental fleet? Just stupid shit like that. Yeah. So I guess it's hard for me to say if you're a guy that wakes up and you have a tough time getting motivation, it's tough. I think the easiest answer to this is just make sure you do what you're passionate about. Okay. Because if you're not doing what you're passionate about, well, then you're just not going to have energy. And you can only fake it for so long. You can only put a fake smile on your face for so long. So pick something that you have passion about, focus on it. And the passion should simply, or not the passion, but the energy should just simply follow. Passion first.
With someone wanting to go on your path,
yeah,
how would you recommend raising money, getting their wheels started in their so-called holding company?
Yeah, raising money. Well, what I did was I literally went to every investor, especially my first ones, and I look at them, and I'm just like, hey, I'm going to put everything to my name in this and all of my time for the next X amount of years. And if I fail, you can have everything of mine. That's basically, what else can you do?
How do you say no to that?
How do you say no to that? It was a little energy, a little spunk, a little smile on the face, a good idea, a good business plan, thought through people and place. How do you say no to that?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not going to do what everybody else does. Actually, I'm going to work for free. That's what I did my first fund. The first $300,000 I raised for those apartments was, here's the plan. I'm going to put in my $80,000 and I'm going to work for free. What can go wrong?
Yeah, right.
If I fail, you inherit $80,000 and free labor from some kid for a couple years.
Right.
So that's how I started raising money. Okay. Don't go to someone and say, hey, I'm going to charge you what the $1 billion company charges you, because guess what? They're going to go with the $1 billion company.
Final piece of advice for struggling entrepreneurs. Someone needs a little kick in the butt. What can you give them?
Get started.
Yep.
There is no the idea. There is simply an idea. If you aren't passionate about it, give up already, because you're not going to get anywhere. And focus. Learn to say no. Billionaires are so good at saying no. They make it sound so easy, right? I was a yes guy. I still kind of am.
Right.
But I say yes and then I kind of weasel my way out of it because I can't
think
do
about
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But my point is, learn to say no, focus, passion. And this generation, me included, we're all so focused on short-term stuff because our attention spans are short. Including my own. You go on Facebook and I'm not interested. It's been 1 minute and that video sucked. Pass. Yeah. That's a problem.
Right.
The average the average length of holding an investment in the United States, don't quote me on this, but it's gone in a fraction of what it was 20 years ago. Well, that right there says it all. People can't hold investments anymore because their attention spans. Well, I'll tell you one thing about investing. I'll tell you one thing about real estate. And I'll tell you one thing about my journey. It took time. And compounding was the most powerful thing. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, a lot of them. But compounding has been my friend. And compounding, the most important part in that formula is time. Yep. So if you don't give it the time it needs, when I say time, I mean decades, not just a couple minutes. If you don't give it the time it needs, you're screwed.
Right.
Just don't start.
All right, guys, there you have it. Andrew Abernathey, amazing story. Started out as a young investor. You can do it too. Got to have the passion, got to have the focus. Appreciate everything.
Thank you so much.
For more podcast information, go ahead and follow us at Startup Republic on Instagram. And again, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Startup Republic. For the latest information and podcast updates, please follow us at Startup Republic on Instagram.